Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Yoma. We are up to Perek Gimel, Mishnah Aleph. Today's Mishnayot should be Leiru Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen. From Mishnah chapter 1, Mishnah 8 until here, the Mishnah discussed aspects of the temple service that were not performed on Yom Kippur, and now returns to where it left off at the end of chapter 1, Mishnah 7, which stated that the Kohen Gadol was kept occupied in Yom Kippur night until the time for slaughtering the Tamid. Our Mishnah describes the next step in the Yom Kippur service. The Mishnah begins, Amar lahem ha-memuneh, the appointed one, the deputy Kohen Gadol, said to the Kohanim, he was the one that carried out this task, Tzeu ur'u im higia zman hashchita, go out to the high place in the temple courtyard and see whether the time for slaughtering the Tamid has arrived. Now the service of slaughtering the Tamid and other offerings is not valid at night. Therefore, before the Tamid was slaughtered, they had to be certain that the night had ended and the day had begun. Now the procedure described in our Mishnah took place on all other days of the year as well. If it had arrived, the one who saw it would say, there is light. The next Tana holds that the Tamid was not slaughtered at the first sign of daylight, but somewhat later. Matitya ben Shmuel Omer, Matitya ben Shmuel says, again, Matitya ben Shmuel is named in Shkalim chapter 5, Mishnah 1, as being in charge of the temple lotteries. He says that they would wait until a Kohen announced, Te'il Penei Chol HaMizrach, the entire eastern horizon is lit up. The Kohanim standing below would ask him, Ad shebechevron, has the light spread until Chevron? Now the Rav says this was said in order to bring attention to the merit of our forefathers who are buried in Marat HaMachpelah in Chevron, V'omer hen, and he would say yes, only then could the Tamid be slaughtered. And the Rav tells us, V'alacha ki Matitya ben Shmuel, the halacha follows the opinion of Matitya ben Shmuel. That is the end of Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Ben now explains why someone had to be sent up to a high place to see whether the time for slaughtering the Tamid had arrived. V'lama utzrechu lekach. Why did they need to do that? Why was it not enough for those standing on the ground to see that there was light? As Rashi explains, Shepam achat ala meor levana. The Mishnah says because it once happened on a cloudy night that moonlight rose in the east just before daybreak. V'dimu sheir mizrach, but they thought that the east was lit by the sun. V'shachatu et tamid, and they slaughtered the tamid before daybreak. V'otziu lebet hasrefa, and they had to take the tamid out to the area designated for burning disqualified offerings, which is an area in the courtyard to the east of the altar. Now, this mistake could not have been made on Yom Kippur, the 10th of Tishrei, the commentators explain, because the moon rises in the east at daybreak only toward the end of each month. Still, the procedure described in the previous Mishnah took place every morning, including Yom Kippur, to prevent a similar mistake. Now, from that time onward, they looked from a high place to make sure that the light was from the sun. The Mishnah now begins its description of the Kohen Gadol's actions in Yom Kippur morning. Horidu Kohen Gadol lebet hatfilah. After it was announced that there was light in the sky, they took the Kohen Gadol down to the mikveh, the immersion room, so that he could immerse his body before slaughtering the Tamid. Now, no Kohen may enter the temple courtyard without first immersing in the mikveh, as taught in the next Mishnah. The Mishnah now digresses to state a rule for when Kohanim serving in the temple had to immerse or wash themselves. Ze haklal haya b'mikdash. This was the rule in the temple. Whoever moves his bowels requires immersion of his body in a mikveh before returning to his service. This Mishnah refers to a Kohen who had already immersed before he entered the temple courtyard. He is not required to immerse again unless he moved his bowels. And whoever urinates requires washing sanctification of his hands and feet with water from the kior before returning to his service. The kior was a large basin that stood in the courtyard between the temple and the altar. Water flowed out of it through faucets. A Kohen who had to sanctify his hands and feet stood next to the kior placed his right hand on his right foot and his left hand on his left foot, and he rubbed his feet with water that flowed onto them from the kilo. Now, in fact, a Kohen may not begin serving in the temple before washing his hands and feet with water from the kilo, as the Mishnah says in Tamid, chapter 4, Mishnah 1, with the explanation of the Rav. Our Mishnah, which specifies a Kohen who had urinated, speaks of one who had already begun to serve on that day. And that is in Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.